Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. Let's have a talk about Stasis and, its good friend, Kismet. Because when you stop everybody from having an untap phase, and then you tell your opponent that all his permanents come into play tapped, it kind of locks down the game. Now, the one complication that this deck faces is, of course, Stasis has an upkeep cost of that 1 blue mana per turn. So these old Stasis decks, they revolved around trying to get card advantage, trying to manage Stasis, trying to have a little bit of control, and then locking down the game. And it's kind of comical because basically the win card was Chronotog. You just tell your opponent, I'm going to skip all the rest of my turns, and if you skip all the rest of your turns, you never have an upkeep phase where you have to pay the upkeep for Stasis. And all of his stuff is coming into play tapped. He never gets to untap it, and then you win by decking him. So what does the rest of the deck do? You've got Boomerang, 4 copies, and this is to manage your Stasis because, of course, you have the untap phase, the upkeep phase, and then the draw phase. And you need to be able to, you'll miss your untap phase before you have your upkeep phase. So if you decide to not pay the upkeep on Stasis, it goes away during your upkeep, but you've already missed your untap phase. So then your opponent's going to get to untap first, and that would just kind of mess things up. So instead what you do is when you put out a Stasis and you pay your 1 blue mana per turn for the upkeep, you wait until you have 2 blue left, and then you bounce it back to your hand with a Boomerang. And now your other choice, depending on whether or not you have another copy of Stasis in your hand, is to just use a Despotic Scepter to destroy Stasis. And that's fine. Like I said, if you have another one in your hand, just go ahead and do that. And again, this just taps. It doesn't require any mana, so you can run out the clock longer on your opponent. And then there's a couple copies of Recall, just to kind of pull things back from your graveyard if you need to. If you needed to pick up one of those copies of Stasis again that you had destroyed or let lapse or something like that. As far as digging out cards from your deck, you've got, of course, Limdol's Vault, just a wonderful card for digging through your deck. You have to pause the video and read that. And this is really one of the vanishingly rare decks where not only is Howling Mine good, but it's really good. So the thing is, you need the cards so that hopefully you can draw a land every turn. Because once you get that Stasis out and you're not untapping your land every turn, you need to somehow be replacing your mana so that you can keep Stasis going as long as possible before you have to Boomerang it again. And so Howling Mine helps out a lot with that, and also land tax, because you can land tax those islands that you've got in here. As far as some minor control, you've got 4 Force of Wills, and you've got 4 Force Spikes. What a wonderful deck for Force Spike. Because once you get Kismet out and Stasis, if your opponent even has a way to do something, you can just counter it, and odds are they can't pay that 1 additional. The Ivory Towers, they really feel like the weakest card in this deck. And I kind of wish I could come up with something to kind of make the deck faster. I've looked into it a little bit. Obviously, some possible substitutions are Icy Manipulator or Capsize. That might be a good one. Instead of all those boomerangs, get essentially a boomerang you can buy back when you have enough mana. And maybe a way to work this in, it's just hard to say. Tradewind Rider was such a great and powerful card in its day, but I don't know if it exactly belongs. But again, the Ivory Tower just kind of feels weak. There are rare games that I play with this deck where it does come down to winning because I had an Ivory Tower, because you've got Pain Lands. You've got the black-blue Pain Land, Underground River, and the blue-white Pain Land, a Dark Waste, and you've got City of Brass, because most of this deck is blue, but you need some black mana for the Limdol's Fault, and you need white mana for the Kismets and the land tax. And then the rest fills out with islands. So again, the way this plays is you just kind of, you put down a Stasis, you pay its upkeep as long as you can, and then you either bounce it back to your hand with Boomerang or you destroy it with Despotic Scepter, and then you'll play it again or play a different one on your turn after you've untapped, and eventually you'll draw down to your Chronotog, at which point your opponent just kind of hopelessly plays by himself. And I remember the first time I played against a deck like this at a little bookstore called the Book Browser in Houston sometime around 1998. And I was playing against this with some terrible like Mirage era Griffin deck or something that I had, and my opponent got out Stasis and got out Kismet on me, and then he put down Chronotog and he explained, "I'm not going to take any more turns. You just play, and I will do nothing." And I thought, "Oh, okay." And so I played several turns just drawing and putting cards into play tapped, and then I kind of realized this wasn't going to go anywhere, and I was eventually going to deck myself. So that's ultimately how this deck wins: is your opponent draws out all their cards while you sit there doing nothing. So it's kind of funny because it's a deck that wins by not playing. So let me know what you think. If you like these old decks, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Join me on Final Trade. Thanks a lot.